righty, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the story. So just 3 days into his presidency, President Trump is on the move across the country already. And today he's about to make his second stop as commander-in-chief to see the devastation from the wildfires that have ravaged so much of California. Now, earlier today, we watched him in North Carolina, where some of those areas are still devastated and trying to recover from Hurricane Helene, despite an unresponsive FEMA. They're still going through this 4 months later. The president heard personal accounts. He was with the First Lady, as you see in these images here. She was very consoling to a number of these victims as well. These people said they made it out alive, but they're still in desperate need for help. Watch.
Grabbed my purse and my little pug dog, and my husband grabbed the dog food and put it in a trash bag, and by the time we got out into the driveway, it was already waist deep, and there was sticks and that kind of thing. I didn't think I was going to make it.
We tried to make our way back in there and gather things best we could, but found a body right away. There was about 8 bodies in our area that first 2 weeks located.
There were like a lot of family members there that passed away, like 11 of them, and there were people out everywhere looking for their loved ones, and there were dead bodies. You know, my son's like, "Mom, you're going to see things you don't want to see."
Just an absolute nightmare, and good to be reminded of what our fellow Americans are going through in this part of North Carolina. I mean, I think she was referring to the Craig family, who lost 11 members of their family. And as she said, can you imagine the United States of America walking around trying to find the bodies in a situation like that and nobody there to help? The president said that he would sign an executive order to potentially get rid of FEMA, saying maybe it's not the best way to organize these kinds of help efforts. Watch.
FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them. I think we're going to recommend that FEMA go away, and we pay directly. We pay a percentage to the state, but the state should fix this. If the state did this from the beginning, it would have been a lot better situation.
Worth analyzing and worth thinking about. White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller will join me in just a few minutes. But first, let's bring in Clay Travis, founder of Outkick, and Kevin Walling, former Biden 2020 campaign surrogate, now an HG creative partner. Gentlemen, welcome good to have both of you here. It's interesting. Let me start with this, Clay. This is from Harry Enton. This is the polling. This is by a CNN polling analyst. Look, just a few days in to President Trump 2.0. Watch.
Donald Trump isn't just in a better position than he was 8 years ago at this point. He's in a better position than he was at any point during his entire first term. Things have very much turned around. This is a very different Donald Trump. He's leading a very different administration the way he's attacking things, and the American public is very much more in line with him than they were at any point during his entire first term.
Clay, welcome. Your thoughts on that?
Trump has engineered the greatest political comeback of all time, Martha. And I think one reason he's done it is because not only is Trump on the right side of issues, Democrats are on the wrong side of a ton of the issues that Trump is focused on. I'll give you just two, Martha. One is, and you remember this, when Trump came down the escalator in 2015 and started talking about the necessity of building a wall, that was an argument that the majority of Americans did not agree with him on. Now, not only do they agree with him on the necessity of building a wall, after 4 years of the failed Biden-Kamala administration, they now want to get as many of the illegals that came into the country deported who are committing violent crimes as possible. These aren't just issues that Trump is on the side of the American public with. They're ones that the American public used to reject him on. Now, 9 years later, they've said, you know what, he was right on this. Let me give you another one, Martha, that I see that's staggering and has been a huge part of, I think, why Outkick has been growing massively in the world of sports and culture as well. New York Times poll, 79% of Americans do not believe that men identifying as women should be able to compete in women's athletics. That's a huge percentage. But by the way, 65% of the people who believe that Democrats, huge majorities of Democrats, in addition to, I think it was like 94% of Republicans, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight. What Donald Trump has done is he's delivering what the American public wanted, what they voted for, and Democrats have painted themselves into a corner by being opposed to what the vast majority of Americans want. And I think that's why Trump's popularity is going up. It's not just him. It's the Democrats are wrong
and
on
I
these
think
issues.
that he has woken up common sense in people, things that people were sort of beaten down to think, well, you have to think this way about this. For example, you have to have FEMA, right? I mean, what about when we have emergencies? But now Kevin Walling, shaking up this idea. What's the most effective way, actually? There are private companies out there that can provide services that can be more economical, actually, than taxpayer services in some cases. Kevin, I want to play this from Obama's speechwriter, Jon Favreau, who says that there is a lesson in the way the president is traveling the country today to these really beleaguered areas. Watch what Jon Favreau says.
During a crisis, we need leaders who are going to not just communicate, but over-communicate. And I think that's a lesson not just in disasters, but for like Democrats and politicians writ large. Donald Trump, he's not fun to hear, but he talks constantly. He's always communicating. And I do think that like Democratic leaders need to realize in this information environment, you need to just be everywhere, do everything.
Well, Kevin, I would add to that you do have to communicate really clearly, and you have to talk to people. He's been basically having a running conversation with the American people ever since the inauguration, but you have to back it up with action. And, all we heard a lot from the Biden administration was, well, we've done all we can do.
Yeah, Martha, I somewhat agree with you. Words and traveling to these communities matter, and being on the ground. I love seeing the First Lady with the president traveling to these communities. Obviously, North Carolina is en route to California. And it's important that Democratic leaders, as you're seeing Governor Josh Stein, the new governor of North Carolina, Mayor Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, are going to meet the president, because I think in these moments with this extreme tragedy, we see the best of America coming together, whether it be Republicans or Democrats, or Republican or Democrat administration. And I am all about reform. I'm old enough, as we all know, issues with FEMA going back to Katrina and earlier than that. So if there are ways to be more efficient in terms of delivering this aid, being on the ground, I'm all about that. But I think Congress certainly, Martha, has a role in all of that as well.
All right. And it seems that they're getting the message, too, that things have to move a little bit more quickly. We're going to see the vote on the Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense tonight. And we're going to get into that with Senator Hagerty in a little while. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great to see you both today. So as we've been saying, in just a matter of days, President Trump delivering on a vow to send illegal immigrants back home to their country, starting with criminal illegal immigrants. A story exclusive coming up with White House advisor Stephen Miller, who has been the brain behind a lot of these policy issues and evolutions, when we come back.
All I can do, just give me the power.
Why are you waiting to take executive action on the border?
Because we need more forces on the border. I don't have the authority to do that.
Okay, we have new photos of deportation flights. Now we get to this stage of this, as you've seen people rounded up, and now we're seeing them boarding planes. Feds making hundreds of arrests across the country, reportedly doubling the daily average that we saw under President Biden, and sending the message to migrants, the migrants saying themselves that their messages to others considering coming to the United States, you should reconsider that. Watch this.
Everyone is getting caught. I don't recommend to cross because there's a lot of migra.
Quite something. Fox News riding along on the raids in Boston this week. Agents say they're targeting, quote, the worst first. Sources telling Fox that includes convicted rapists, child predators. We've shown you examples of these individuals and what they have been charged or convicted of. Now the Trump administration making it easier to deputize state and local law enforcers to help with immigration enforcement. That just crossing, according to Reuters. Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor, standing by. But first, let's go to our correspondent, Alexis McAdams, reporting on a lot of this live from New York. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Martha. Well, it's happening quickly, just as President Trump promised. We're one day in, and more than 500 migrants who officials say were in the country illegally were taken into custody in 24 hours. Sources telling Fox News these men committed heinous crimes, including rape and attempted murder. And ICE says some are part of the dangerous South American gangs we've been talking about for months. So in Chicago, police arrested a man who's been convicted of attempted murder. Okay, he was sentenced to 17 years behind bars. He served some of the time, but then ICE lodged a detainer for him, and it was not honored. So he was back on the streets for years, back since 2017. Also here in New York, ICE arresting a man who they say is a known or suspected terrorist yesterday. Officials say he's from Turkey and entered the country illegally. This week, as you saw, our Fox cameras out on the streets of Boston as they arrested 8 migrants for a wide range of crimes. The Trump team says the migrants are going home and not coming back to the U.S. And this morning, the White House press secretary posting that President Trump is going to send a strong and clear message to the world with that plane that they said was packed with at least 80 Guatemalan nationals that they were sending back home, saying they will have severe consequences if they come back to this country. Martha.
All right, Alexis, thank you very much. Let's bring in Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor. Stephen, good to have you with us. There's so much happening so quickly, but let me get your thoughts on something that we just mentioned in the intro here, which is that the Trump administration is taking steps to deputize U.S. state and local law enforcement to work with ICE. How would that work? And clearly there's going to be some cities where they're going to refuse to do that, right?
Yes, so this is an example of how President Trump is unleashing a vast and broad array of federal statutory authorities to secure the homeland. Authorities that Congress has enacted that exist in statute, but that have never been used before. The Secretary of Homeland Security has the authority to deputize both federal law enforcement as well as state and local law enforcement and the National Guard to conduct immigration enforcement activities. The Secretary of Homeland Security has already used that authority to deputize other federal law enforcement, including all the law enforcement branches at DOJ. And that authority will be leveraged shortly to deputize state and local law enforcement to conduct immigration arrests as well. Additionally, there's an authority known as 287G in the Immigration and Nationality Act that will be used to enroll National Guard operating in a state capacity to assist and support the Border Patrol in the conduct of immigration enforcement. You've also seen and referenced the military deportation flights that are taking place. For the first time in American history, under President Trump's command and control, military aircraft are being used to remove illegal aliens from this country as part of a vast, coordinated interagency operation to defend the homeland and repel the invasion. These are just some of the many authorities that President Trump has leveraged in his first days in office to end the migrant invasion of the U.S. homeland.
So I would just point out, we just played a clip in the tease, Stephen, that 2 clips of President Biden saying, I don't have any more authority on this. You know, Congress is going to have to do something. But everything that you're pointing out, these are statutes that are on the books already. These are things that Alejandro Mayorkas, as Homeland Security chief, could have employed. He could have done all of these things, correct?
Yes, every single authority that I've mentioned and many more were enacted by Congress. The president went all the way back to 1798 through 2025 and identified every statute in existence that allows him to secure and defend the American homeland. So 1798, we have the Alien Enemies Act, which will be used shortly to remove illegal alien gang members such as Tren de Aragua from the United States. Congress also passed Remain in Mexico authority that President Trump was the first president in American history to use. As of today, Martha, that is operational. It is up and running, and we are using Remain in Mexico. President Trump is also reactivating our Safe Third agreements to end asylum fraud across the southwest border. And as mentioned earlier, President Trump is using all federal law enforcement to support and assist in the identification and removal of priority illegal alien targets from the United States and out of the country. And of course, the Department of Defense has been unleashed both on the border and with respect to aircraft to end the illegal immigration into our country.
It's extraordinary. You know, one of the things that strikes me when I look at sound bites like the one we played on the way in, where you have someone exiting the country who said, I'm telling, you know, the message is don't cross. You know, they're sending all of us back. And then I want to play this tape of a migrant who was taken into custody in the criminal roundup. Here's what he had to say. You may have seen this tape. I want to get your reaction to it. Let's watch.
I'm not going back to Haiti. Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
He says not going back to Haiti. You heard what he said. And cheering on Biden and Obama. What's your reaction to that? And what's the impact on people who might have been thinking, I guess I'm going to try to get in?
4 years of national humiliation and embarrassment are over. Illegal aliens are no longer exempt from our laws. Far from it. They are the priority for immigration enforcement, for law enforcement in this country. And so that illegal alien you mentioned, he's being shipped back, and every single illegal alien that is identified for removal is going to be successfully removed from this country. We are not going to allow the trespass and invasion of this country anymore. And the Department of Justice is going to aggressively use its authorities to prosecute immigration crime. Child traffickers are going to be going to jail for decades. Human smugglers are going to be put behind bars. Individuals engaged in sex trafficking are going to spend the rest of their lives on this planet in jail and behind bars. Local officials who violate our laws are also subject to enforcement of our immigration laws.
I mean, we have gangs.
Every resource we have is going to be deployed and it's going to be used, Martha.
I love the message that's going to gangs who have made even more money on trafficking people than drugs in recent years. 16 states have known gang presence and cartel operations in them. But I want to just give you something that we just got moments ago. From ABC is reporting this, and that's all I've got on it so far. ICE agents denied entry to a Southside elementary school in the Chicago public school system, and they're saying that they followed protocols, the principal says, and did not allow the agents inside. Are you aware of that situation, and is that something that is acceptable? We've heard talk about schools and churches as sanctuary spots.
There's no sanctuary for criminal aliens in this country, nor is there a sanctuary for child trafficking, for child smuggling, or for child endangerment. ICE officers will take the actions necessary to protect the lives and safety of our children and to identify individuals who are involved in the smuggling and trafficking of our children. In order to conduct these investigations, in order to protect the safety and security of children all across America, federal law enforcement needs unrestricted access to conduct basic investigations. 500,000 children were trafficked into this country under Joe Biden. That is a stain on our national conscience. It's a stain on our history. It's ending now. And the Department of Justice, working with the Department of Homeland Security, is going to prioritize the end of human trafficking, the end of human smuggling, and the entire machinery of government is going to be used to stop the cartels, to stop the coyotes, to stop the traffickers, to stop the smugglers from preying on our citizens and exploiting our country. We are not going to be trammeled anymore. We're not going to be trampled anymore. We're certainly not going to be abused and violated anymore. We're going to be a free country again, Martha.
Well, it's something that we've turned too much of a blind eye to, the trafficking and the abuse of children and the slave labor that is going on in some of these factories in the Southwest. And I look forward to talking to you more about that. Stephen Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. So far, 2 of President Trump's nominees have passed the confirmation test and have been installed in very high-ranking cabinet positions. But a handful of others, during the next hours and days ahead, will face crucial tests. First up, tonight, Secretary of Defense pick Pete Hegseth will get his vote this evening. So how is it looking? And is it on shaky ground? We're going to go through that coming up next.
Pete Hegseth is someone who's going to fix the Pentagon and deliver on President Trump's vision of peace through strength. He's exactly the type of leader that the Pentagon needs in the face of an increasingly complex and escalating security situation that's occurring around the world.
And breaking today, a Republican Senate source telling Fox that there are, quote, still a few issues ahead of tonight's crucial vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as the next defense secretary for the United States of America. Now, Marco Rubio and John Ratcliffe are the only sworn-in members so far of Trump's cabinet. We've only had a couple of days at this so far, but we know that there is a lot of impetus to get these done as quickly as possible. You can see the lineup of who is facing Senate votes here and some very big hearings coming next week with RFK Jr., Kash Patel, and Tulsi Gabbard. I'm joined now by Tennessee Republican Senator Bill Hagerty, who plans to vote yes for Pete Hegseth tonight, and he joins me now. Senator, thank you very much for joining me.
It's great to be with you, Martha.
Give me your sense of of where this stands, and if there are wobbly members on Pete Hegseth, who do you think they are?
Well, we're moving ahead in due course here. I think the biggest difficulty has been the Democrats that are using every procedural move they can, Martha, to try to slow this thing down. Right now, we're scheduled to vote on Pete tonight at about 8:45 p.m. From that point, we'll move on to start the clock again for Kristi Noem. That'll take another 30 hours of work. So Kristi won't come up again until very early on Sunday morning. Then we'll start the clock off on Scott Besson around 4 a.m. And then we'll roll forward into Monday, vote in Scott, then go to Sean Duffy and just continue this process. The Democrats have used every procedural mechanism available to them to slow us down. And I'll just remind you, Martha, we are far, far behind where we were in Obama's initial administration. We're behind where we were, frankly, with President Trump, his first term, and clearly President Biden. I don't think the Democrats got the message when...
If I may, Senator, it only takes members of the GOP to approve Hegseth. And while it's clear that Democrats are delaying this as much as they can, if you have all of the Republican votes and even lose 3, he could still be confirmed. And that was the thinking that Collins and Murkowski and potentially McConnell, but then J.D. Vance could put him over. But now we're sensing that maybe there is another concern. Do you see that?
Well, you've certainly got the process right. That's how it would work. And certainly our members are all entitled to vote as they're going to. I'm certainly going to be supportive of Pete because I think if you watch the 4.5-hour confirmation hearing, you're going to see that Pete is very bright, very energetic, and very talented. He's going to be able to inspire the troops, recruit, and retain as he should. And I hope that all my colleagues will take a very hard look at that and vote in the affirmative tonight.
All right. Well, I understand you're keeping it close to the vest. We're hearing a couple things about different members, and we'll see where all of this goes tonight. As you say, they will vote how they vote. And we understand how you're going to vote in support of Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. Senator, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much. So President Trump unlocking a trove of previously classified documents. This is a big deal for people who follow this very closely on these 3 assassinations, which rocked the country in the 1960s. The assassinations of JFK, his brother RFK, and then Martin Luther King that same year as RFK. So we're going to investigate what we expect to be uncovered here, what people think might be in there, coming up next.
My uncle, John Kennedy, did that. He refused to go to war. He said, I want to take the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds.
You're talking about your uncle who was assassinated, and you believe the intelligence agencies were a part of that. What happens to you?
Well, I got to be careful.
That everything will be revealed after he signed an executive order declassifying files on the assassinations of President Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr., who was running for president at the time, and Martin Luther King Jr. Correspondent Mark Meredith reporting live on this big development from Washington. Hi, Mark.
Martha, good afternoon to you. President Trump wants all the documents tied to the deaths of 3 major American figures released within a matter of weeks. Thursday's executive order gives the Director of National Intelligence 15 days to come up with plans to release all the records tied to the assassination of President Kennedy. He's also giving the government 45 days to come up with plans to release all the documents tied to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was assassinated back in April of 1968, almost 57 years ago. The King family reacting today, saying they want to see what's in those files. They write, "For us, the assassination of our father is deeply personal, family loss that we have endured over the last 56 years. We hope to be provided the opportunity to review the files as a family prior to its public release." Trump also ordering the government to release the files tied to the death of Robert F. Kennedy, who was killed in 1968. His son, Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services, reportedly wants the documents to come out. The New York Times writes the younger Mr. Kennedy has raised the subject of releasing the papers related to his family repeatedly with Trump, according to people who have listened to him expound on the subject. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, was reacting to this yesterday. He said, "Now do UFOs." There's no indication that the UFO materials are going to be coming up anytime soon. But this week, Trump did task his chief of staff to come up with a report on the drones that have been spotted all over New Jersey. Trump says he wants to tell Americans about what the government knows about that.
We'd like to know
Martha.
more about that in New Jersey, that's for sure. Mark, thank you very much. So here is President Trump signing that order among many. Watch this.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades. And everything will be revealed. Okay? Give that to RFK Jr.
Give that pen to RFK Jr., he says. Let's bring in Douglas Brinkley, presidential historian and history professor at Rice University. Douglas, good to see you, as always. Here is RFK Jr. talking about his father's assassination on the All In podcast back in May. Watch this.
Do you believe they murdered or were involved in the murder of your uncle?
The CIA, yes, they were definitely involved in the murder and the 6-year cover-up. They're still not releasing the papers that legally they have to release. But I don't think there's any doubt.
Douglas, your thoughts on this executive order signed by President Trump, and within a matter of days, he wants to see the plan to finally release all of it, not hold anything back from the CIA.
I think the time has come to release all of these documents. We have so many conspiracy theories going out there, and over a period of time, batches have been released. But we might as well just get this done with and see what happened. Bobby Kennedy Jr., I've spoken to him over the years. He's been on a hobby horse about believing the CIA killed his father. I'm not of that school, but he's taken the time to actually go meet Sirhan Sirhan, the charged and imprisoned assassin, and Bobby Jr. wanted him released. Coretta Scott King and the King family, particularly Dexter, went to meet James Earl Ray, who killed King, and they believed Ray was innocent. So, there's been this confusion in the country on all three assassinations, and this should be the last big step. But we will never know if things were destroyed somewhere along the line. Let's see if any redactions are still hanging in there. But the argument now, after 50 years, that it's, we have to keep holding on to this stuff. I think transparency is good now, just like Frank Church, a Democrat of Idaho, did after Watergate. There are these moments where you got to let this stuff out, and Trump committed to it, and he lived through with it with that executive order.
I think he's. It says something about his larger feeling about the CIA and about things that are kept from the public. And certainly after this much time, it seems like it should be out. But as you point out, there may be things that were destroyed, and we'll see what the redactions look like. But in any event, it seems high time. It's interesting that Senator Blackburn, put out there today in this same vein that she wants to see the Jeffrey Epstein documents. She says he built a disgusting global sex trafficking network. Americans deserve to know exactly who was affiliated with this network. I get this question a lot, Douglas. I mean, what happened to the evidence that was found in Epstein's house? And, they went out of there with a treasure trove, they told us, of information.
I don't know, and that's why I think the senators, asking for some transparency on that. It's clear that we're living in an age where people are suspicious of the federal government, and that's what this election, one of the things that Trump ran on. I'm sure Epstein might come up down the line, but maybe not. It's so close to our time. In the cases of both Kennedys and King, 50 years is an awful long time. Let's get it all out there and move on and see how the puzzle pieces meet.
Yeah, I brought up the name Thomas Crooks earlier today, and someone said, "Who's that?" And I said, "Doesn't that pretty much tell you everything you need to know?" This is the young man who tried to kill President Trump, and it's like we know absolutely nothing about this individual, and most people don't even know his name. It's pretty stunning. So, Douglas, thank you, as always. Good to see you. Historian and author, professor at Rice University. So breaking details now on the female hostages who could be free from Hamas's grip hours from now. A huge moment for their families as they wait with bated breath. We'll be right back. Soldiers captured during the October 7th terror attacks are set to be freed. We understand that it's going to happen tomorrow. just an incredibly long wait and excruciating wait for the families of these members of the IDF. They will be exchanged for a large number of prisoners being held in Israel. A lot of questions about that as well. Hamas is also expected to update Israel on civilians who are still in captivity, including 3 American citizens believed to be alive. We are still waiting to bring these Americans home as this process continues. And Kafir Bibas, who was just 9 months old, we remember that excruciating video of him and his sibling and his mom when they were taken. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin, live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Hi, Mike.
And Martha, every stage of this hostage release deal has been a bumpy road, and you can imagine just how taxing that is for the families of the hostage. This one hit a snag, but it is back on track, and Hamas has turned over the names of 4 female Israeli soldiers scheduled to be released tomorrow. All of them were stationed at the Nahal Oz military base right next to the Gaza Strip. The names are Karina Arayev, 20 years old. She was an observer. Liri Elbag, 20 years old, also an observer. 20-year-old Daniela Gilboa had appeared on a hostage video pleading for the government to bring her home. And Nama Levy appeared in one of the many horrific images from October 7th. She was the one seen on video with blood-soaked sweatpants while being manhandled into a 4x4 in Gaza City. The only female soldier hostage not on the list is Agam Berger. The hang-up was that the deal called for female civilians and children to be released before the soldiers. Shiri Bibas, who had 2 young boys with her, not on the list. Arbel Yahud also not on the list. So that's the situation. They're expected to get out tomorrow, Martha.
Okay, Mike Tobin, thank you very much. Well, a lot of developments in the Middle East and Houthi rebels suddenly releasing the crew of a ship. Do you remember this video? They came in on a helicopter and seized this ship more than a year ago. So those people have been on that ship the entire year, and now they are being released. This all happened a month after the October 7th attacks. The rebels also saying that they will scale back their attacks now, post-Trump inaugural, because of the ceasefire in Gaza. Now, the Houthis, Iran proxies, targeting dozens of ships in the past 14 months, sinking 2 of them and killing 4 crew members. We heard not a whole lot about this from the White House during all of this in terms of their take on the Houthis or what we were supposed to do to fight back. Here's what President Trump told Sean Hannity this week about Iran. Watch.
The only thing I've said about Iran, and I want them to have a great country. They have great potential. The people are amazing. The only thing I said about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Well, we know that they have great people and great potential. Joining me now, Iranian-American journalist and activist Masih Alinejad and Nazi Moinian, PhD and adjunct fellow at the Middle East Institute. She grew up in Tehran, moved to the United States at the start of the 1979 revolution. Great to have both of you with us. Thank you very much for being here. Nazi, what is your reaction to the Houthis backing down so quickly?
It's unbelievable. It's news we all welcome. I credit this to Trump effect. We've heard it. We are now experiencing it. After a few days just in the office, we see the orientation of the Middle East changing. And the proof of that is the release of the hostages and the Houthis scaling back their attacks.
Yeah. What kind of change? Absolutely. What change do you see since the inauguration with regard to the relationship between the United States and Iran and the reaction on Iran's side and all of these proxies?
Let's be very clear. First of all, Iran is different from Islamic Republic. So Iranians are happy because they believe that Trump's administration, especially the new appointees, Mark Rubio and Mike Waltz, giving nightmare to mullahs. They're nervous because they all know that maximum pressure gave them a hard time during the first time when President Trump was in power. But now, as repeatedly people of Iran says that they don't want this regime to be in power. So they're actually happy when they see that now after the proxies of the Islamic Republic, Hamas, Hezbollah being crushed by Israeli, now Houthi being sponsored by the Islamic Republic back to the terrorist list, terrorist organization after the removal of this proxies from terrorist list by the Biden administration. That was just appeasement. So Iranians are welcoming this decision, but they really want to see that Trump is listening to the people of Iran who say that we don't want this regime to be in power.
I know that you both want very much for this regime to be toppled. One of the things that you just heard President Trump bring up there was, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, Nazi, and they are in the weakest position, this Islamic government, that they've been in decades. Do you think this is the right time? And I know Sean Hannity asked President Trump about this, to go after those nuclear facilities.
Well, I have had very extensive conversations with senior administration officials, and we all agree that Tehran is on its back foot. I think Tehran is on its back, actually. Being in Tehran, looking at the region, understanding that Hamas and Hezbollah are very weakened to the point of non-existence. But we'll see what happens when, if and when they rebuild and regroup. I hope not. But this is a moment that the mullahs scared the most, with Trump administration coming in and lining up, as my dear friend Masih said, who we're twinning today accidentally with. This is a moment that Iranians are waiting for. And what Iranians want is definitely different than what the regime wants. This is the fear that the mullahs had, that when President Trump comes into power, their best days are over, and they have to watch their back because the proxies are weakened. Hopefully, their oil sanctions will be forcefully enforced. The Iranians found their voice and their agency on September 16, 2022 with Women Life Freedom Movement. They're not willing to back down. This is a moment that we can put the maximum pressure we can on the regime and really listen to the Iranian people and see what is it that they want.
Nazi, what's the biggest difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration in terms of Iran?
Tons of differences, as we can already see. But with respect to Iran, I really appreciated that Senator Marco Rubio, in his confirmation hearings, made the point to differentiate between the people and the regime. And he was very articulate about the people of Iran, really spoke to them. I got tons of emails and texts. Did you hear this? Did you hear this? He really made the line that this is the biggest gap that exists in any country in the world between the regime and its people, that we have to empower these people. This is an ancient civilization. They want to be in the Western orbit. They don't like the regime that they've been taken hostage by for the past 46 years. And we have to heed that call. We have to understand that the Iranians like America and that they want to be part of the Western orbit.
Absolutely. Quickly, Nazi, do you think there's still, we saw Pezeshkian on with Lester Holt saying, oh, we never wanted to kill President Trump. Do you believe that as someone who's also been targeted yourself? You have a trial coming up on March 14th for the people who tried to kill you from Iran.
I never believed that. They are in the weakest point right now, and they know that this time they need America to survive. And that's why I strongly believe that the time of appeasement is over. If Trump administration willing to negotiate with the Islamic Republic without considering human rights, without considering that the Islamic Republic is the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the region, then they will put the national security of United States of America in danger.
Well, you've both done so much to bring attention to this issue. Thank you very much. It's going to be interesting to see how different things are at this point. Masih and Nazi, thank you very much for being here today. You're echoing spring. We love it. All right, we'll be right back after this break. So President Trump, not the only one, debuting this week in Washington, 2 giant pandas at the Smithsonian National Zoo today. Today was the first day that people could go in and see them. Bao Li and King Bo are both 3 years old, a little bit lazy at the moment. They were eating a bunch of bamboo before. They are going to be here for 10 years in a deal with China that's been going on since Nixon. You may have seen them a couple weeks ago. They loved this. Look at how cute they love the snow. Look at them rolling around in the snow, having a blast. It reminds me of my 2 dogs when it snows. They run outside and do exactly that. The Panda Cam is back, and it's running from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It might be one of the best parts of the U.S.-China relationship is the pandas. Things are a little rocky on a lot of fronts. So at least we have these guys. That is the story for this Friday, January 24th. But as always, the story goes on. I'm going to see you later tonight with Jimmy Fallon, which I'm looking forward to. I also have a new episode of the Untold Story podcast. White House counselor to President Trump, Alina Habba. How did they meet? Where is she from? All of that good inside scoop. So tune in for that. I'll see you back here tonight.